Okay, we'll call the meeting of November 20th to order, 7 PM. Please stand and join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland is absent. Tom Baylor,
Here.
Kenny Jones,
Here.
Jeff Guard,
Here.
Melina Meyer,
Here.
Ann Schaefer,
Here.
Dave Allison,
Here.
Dave Gleason.
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Any disclosures of conflicts of interest? Ex parte communications?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
under the approval of the consent calendar, council concurrence of mayor's appointments, I am one of the folks that was up for the running, and so I might have a conflict in that. I put my name in for interest in Harbor Commission,
Okay.
It's not mine.
and I'd like to speak on that as an audience member, but so
Are the, okay. Well, which item is that under?
Or the Harbor Commission, right?
So it's
It's under new and
That's-
miscellaneous business.
N19.
Yeah, it's not on the consent calendar.
oh, okay. I thought it was.
The Fisheries
The
Development.
Fisheries Development Committee is on.
Oh,
Thing. You
yeah,
weren't on that,
so-
were you?
no. So on new and miscellaneous business, council's concurrence of mayor's appointments to fill vacancies on city boards and commissions.
Number 19.
Okay. Okay, I would say if you're gonna comment as a member of the public, that you do that during
Public
audience
comment.
participation. Okay, anything else? Yes.
Yeah, it's Melina.
Oh, go ahead, Melina.
I have a conflict with ordinance 1178 under ordinance and resolutions, item 16. Because I was approved my marijuana license for a retail establishment, this tax would affect my business. Alcohol and tobacco is under there too, so I don't know what percentage I am of those three that would do, but I think maybe perception would outweigh.
I think as the chair, I would rule that you don't have a conflict, that I accept your perception being there, but as this would apply to all marijuana dealers, unless council feels otherwise, I don't see a conflict there.
I do. She
Yeah, I think I'd, at the very
directly
least,
affected.
perception of conflict of interest, and I would recommend it.
Okay, that we can, okay, Melina, you'll have a conflict on that, and item 16, you can sit out on that one. Councilmember Schaefer?
Item 22, I work for the Science Center, which is requesting to lease the old Sea Grant building. I don't stand to gain any monetary income from the lease, so I don't think I have a conflict, but I just want to make sure it's out there.
Okay,
Yeah.
appreciate that. I don't see a conflict unless council feels otherwise. Councilmember Baylor?
I just, on the alcohol and tobacco tax, she would have the right to, like Councilman Jones, to speak at audience comments. I don't know if she realized that.
Sure. Yeah, any counselor can speak to anything on the agenda during audience comments if you'd like to do that, Melina. Any other,
Okay.
any,
Yeah, I would like to do that.
okay, any other conflicts? I just state for the sales tax ordinance that I do have a small business that collect sales tax mostly in the summertime, but it's not gonna affect whether I sell 3 candy bars or 6 out of my machine, so I don't think I have a conflict, but just to throw it out there, I do pay sales tax or collect sales tax for the city.
Yeah, as do I, but I don't think it's any kind of a conflict.
Oh, as long as we're getting it out there, we pay sales tax too on a rental.
I figured that was the case, so anyway, many of us have businesses that collect the sales tax, but won't be a conflict. Okay, anything else? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move on to communications by and petitions from visitors. We don't have any guest speakers, so we can hear audience comments. Now we'll start with those in the room, and then Malina, I'll get to you when it slows down here. Any audience comments? Come on up use the mic, please. People on the phone can't hear you if you're not using the mic.
Most of you know me. My name is Susan Harding. I'm here representing Prince William Sound College. And I'd just like to encourage you to continue to include the college in your budget. And we appreciate the fact that you did it for this year. And I'd like to just point out to you that the college is a great asset, I think, to the community of Cordova. We have a lot of students who have graduated with their AA degree when they finished high school. Actually, they graduated before they finished high school and went on to graduate from college in a faster fashion than the typical freshman. And we have many other students who have entered college as sophomores or second semester sophomores because they've accumulated enough credits, which of course lowers the cost of college for them and also gives them an opportunity to explore a lot of options before they decide what they're going to do and what kind of major they're going to have. I'd also like to remind you that we have a very active program pursuing the CNA program, and we're all of the students that we've had so far have been placed in jobs that have wanted them. We only have one person actually that isn't in a CNA job right now from the last classes, and we're having another class at the request of the Cordova Community Medical Center. It's going to be starting in January, and I think it's a benefit to the community. We also are planning to hopefully increase our ABE and GED program to provide more services to people in Cordova. And I appreciate the chance to come and just remind you of how great the college really is and how much it's a benefit to the community. Do any of you have any questions?
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you,
Thank
Susan.
you.
Can we raise that chair up?
No, but it really looks.
Does it go up?
Okay, anybody else in the audience like to come up? Please state your name and
Hi, Katrina Hoffman, 301 South 2nd Street. Just wanted to let the folks on the phone know I'm here. I'm happy to answer any questions about the old Sea Grant building lease. It's very straightforward. At the Harbor Commission meeting, we talked about 3 years being a good length of time. That's what the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended. At that time, we should be in our new building and should have a good idea of whether or not we want to continue to have any waterfront access, and you may have ideas about that space at that time as well. When that item comes up, I'll be here if you have any additional questions. The Science Center's done about $20,000 worth of restoration work to that building, so we've been adding value to it over time. And then also, I just wanted to speak to the item from item number 21 in the packet. That's the letter of interest from Sheridan Joyce about property that he's interested in using for his business. And as a neighbor of Sheridan, where he currently has the business in a non-commercial zoned area, I would just want to say he's been a very courteous business owner and neighbor to that end. It seems like he gets a lot of business for Cordova Power Sports, and I would speak in favor of the city supporting his request to directly negotiate with him or pursue whatever other purchase or bid options you need to do to make that property available. But he needs room to grow. It's very obvious every time I walk my dog, and there's obviously a lot of demand for his business, and I think it'd be great to support a young person who moved back to town and wants to be an entrepreneur. Thanks.
thank you.
Jim Cash, 824 Woodland Drive. A couple things. I too would like to speak in support of making the land available for Sheridan Joyce for his business. Anytime anyone wants to invest in Cordova is a good thing, which brings me to the reason I'm here as well. You're not going to tax this town into prosperity. A seasonal sales tax didn't work before. It wound up being the split sales tax we had before was a 3 and 6, if I remember right, and it wound up just staying 6. So if we do a split sales tax again, it's just going to wind up staying 8. I really suggest you live within your means. Taxing this town more is just going to drive more people away, drive more business out of town. It is so easy to buy things over the internet. Why would anybody buy things in town, especially when the tax rates are already what they are? So please find another way or actually live within your means. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Dawkin, and I'm here on behalf of the Copper River Watershed Project. We have a letter of correspondence today. I understand it's not an action item, but I thought I would just take my 3 minutes, and I hope we can come back to it at some point. Derelict boats in our harbor along shorelines and surrounding areas have made headlines across our state. I apologize, I will reference my verbiage. We know and acknowledge here in Cordova that derelict vessels are a growing concern. In January of 2018, the city of Cordova passed a resolution in acknowledgement that we need to improve management practices for cleaning up derelict boats. We at the Copper River Watershed, our mission is to promote a salmon-rich, intact watershed for all communities living within, and do so by forming partnerships for watershed scale planning and projects. Much like our efforts for replacing degraded culverts blocking fish passage, large projects take numerous partners. Each of us cannot accomplish our large-scale projects alone. So we know that derelict boats pose numerous risks to our mission. They harbor hazardous materials like hydrocarbons, plastics, battery acids, and leach those into our waterways used by salmon and other marine wildlife. And they may change the hydrology of the area, encouraging unnatural silt accumulation, physically blocking natural water flow, and let's be honest, they're just really unsightly. So all around, I feel that they are, and we feel they're a cost for salmon, people, and habitat quality for our town. So wanting to address this issue, I'm asking the city to consider helping us make a positive change in removing some vessels, abandoned derelict vessels. And in doing so, it means accepting them into your landfill. So with assistance from Sam Greenwood and Aaron Muma, we have 4 derelict vessels, which are noted in the letter. And they have come up with an estimated cost of a total of $12,000 for the landfill to receive them, bury them, and or rearrange them. And knowing that this city is under strain economically, I'm hoping that with the 2020 budget still, perhaps you could take that into consideration, and knowing that we have to match something against $95,000 with our NOAA grant, and that being a small nonprofit, we have some difficulties in finding match. So any money that could be put into the 2020 budget to not only help our vessels that are in this project, but maybe forecasting in the future, year to year, putting aside some money to think about managing derelict vessels. If they sink in the harbor, it's going to cost a lot more. So if they can be managed and we can forecast those expenses, maybe we could address that. And it is a citywide, but also a statewide concern. And this is the first time I've ever addressed City Council, so thank you very much. And hopefully we can create an action item for next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Sheridan Joyce, and I live at 1001 Pipe Street. So I'm here just in favor of you guys upholding the plan and zoning's recommendation to mark as available and sell a portion of the Northwestern Company Terminal Ground B in negotiations with the city manager to me/Cordova Power Sports. So my letter of interest was pretty brief, so I just figured I'd give you guys a few more details. This lot would be moving the Cordova Power Sports business into a commercial zone. It'd be a 2,400 square foot steel construction building. And it, of course, would involve additional leveling of that lot and a driveway to the Copper River Highway. This isn't going to be a personal use lot, not a personal junkyard, not personal storage. It's not a speculation investment. This is an actual commercial development that's going to happen. So of course, there's a few ways this would benefit Cordova. It'll support the local economy and hiring contractors and employees during the construction process, of course. And it would also likely have permanent or seasonal employees as the business continues to grow. A lot of the services my business offers are not really available anywhere else in Cordova, so this kind of helps with the reliance on ferry service and just kind of keeps more of Cordova's dollars in Cordova. This, of course, would increase this business being able to grow, would increase city sales tax, and of course, the purchase price of the land would also be a bit of a boost. This project's fully funded, and I'm more than happy to work with strict restrictions and performance expectations on this property. That's all I have for you. If you have any questions or anything, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, once this gets on the agenda, I'll have some questions if you're going to stay around. And
Yeah, I'll be here.
particularly the fully funded part, I'll be interested in see what prices and process you've gone through to get to that. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones, were you gonna?
Oh, I'll wait for the public.
Okay, I thought. You get to go again though here soon.
Barb Jewell, mile 2.2 Whiteshed Road. I want to speak to a couple of things. One is I really appreciate the budget conversation that have been happening, both in terms of their depth and breadth, in looking at both how to cut expenses and how to expand revenues. Costs go up. They just do. My costs go up to buy my clothing, my food, my electricity, my housing. Everyone's costs go up. That happens, and we need to figure out a way to pay for it, and not extravagantly, but to maintain the quality of our community. So again, I appreciate you exploring various avenues for how to maintain the quality of our community. I also wanted to support Ms. Harding's comments. Being a part of both the hospital and the school district, we certainly benefit from a strong community college and their investment both at the high school education and then the professional development at the hospital. So I very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience? Don't see any. Councilmember Jones?
Thank you. My name's Ken Jones, 514 Sunnyside Drive. And I just mainly wanted to touch on the Harbor Commission appointment. I see in the packet that Mayor Clay Copeland chose to not reappoint me to Harbor Commission, and I'm just here to ask you guys to reject that recommendation and to place me back on the Harbor Commission. I'm not sure exactly what his reasons were, but I feel like it is a mistake to not include me in that commission. I've been a very active member for the last 6 years and been working really hard towards port and harbor renovations in the community. And it's one of my, as you know, one of my biggest drives is to try to get this harbor replaced. And when I got on the Harbor Commission, there wasn't even a thought of putting in a grant application or anything. And I feel like I was one of the driving forces to actually get this on agendas and get some grant applications put in. And as we found out last week, we were selected for the Tier 1 grant with the state. Now we just need to get it funded with the state budget. But yeah, I just ask that you guys consider rejecting his recommendation and appointing me on that commission. So, thank you.
Not so fast. Go ahead, Councilmember Baylor.
Yeah, for those that don't know and for the public out there listening, so what are your uses of the harbor? I know you're involved in several fisheries. Could you give us kind of a scope of how you're using the harbor and what it means to you?
Yeah, so obviously, I think most people know that I have two commercial fishing businesses. I've got a gill netter and a seine operation. And with my seine boat, I also do scientific research charters. I do adventure tourism charters, hunting charters, transport for sport fishermen. I'm a subsistence user. I sport fish myself. I hunt, and I, I'm one of the only fishermen in the harbor that still catches herring commercially. I catch halibut and black cod commercially. I went crabbing the last 2 years. I've been shrimping before, and I do all the salmon. So as far as I know, I participate in every commercial fishery available in Prince William Sound, and yeah, I feel like I have a pretty well-rounded view of what the harbor needs and what all the different user groups need. The only one that I'm not really part of is the Live Aboard user group. But as far as the other ones, I'm a member of that user group. So,
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilmember Guard.
We've talked about this subject of council members being on boards and commissions and whether that opens up.
If you have
I
a
can s-
question specifically for
No,
Ken, otherwise we'll debate the other aspects.
I can speak to some of the reasoning behind it at the time. Yeah, when
Yeah.
it comes up.
Okay, then, because that's kind of where I was trying to
Yeah.
get to, so.
Yeah, we could, there's a spot for that on the agenda.
Okay.
Get to that. Any other questions for Councilmember, or Citizen Jones? Thank you.
all right, thanks.
Okay, Melina, you're up.
All right, Melina Myers, 500 Cannery Row, the owner of the new company store. I'm just going to talk to you guys a little about ordinance 1168, which would add marijuana, tobacco, and alcohol to the surtax. I think adding marijuana to that sales tax code would be very debilitating to a brand new business in town, where that current product that is being sold in Cordova currently is getting zero tax on right now. With the sales tax, and if it was another additional 6%, that puts a 12% tax on the product that is currently getting zero taxes on. And with this industry, it is, excuse me, heavily regulated and heavily taxed. At a state level, we are taxed at the highest fee than any other state in the country. And so if this tax were to be put in, and the sales tax were to be raised or even staying at the current rate at that, we would be the highest in the state, which in turn would be the highest in the country. And I think that message in general puts it out there that's something that you're very against, which the population, I think, in Cordova has been in favor of it. Just looking at the voting record of how Cordova has voted in the state and then also in the local election. Talking a little bit about the other side of that ordinance, since I'm going to be sitting that out, I can somewhat see alcohol being added on there, just because I think that is a big one that our law enforcement gets called upon for. Tobacco, I can see both sides from it, but I don't think that we're exactly getting calls, or I think that's more of a personal choice rather than something that affects the rest of the community. And if this ordinance did go through, would like to see some kind of note or provision that maybe if the hospital changed hands, that this tax would go away or something like that. I just think that if a tax like this were to be implemented, that it should go to something that is helping the community rather than offsetting budget, needing to raise new revenues. So just looking at any kind of product or taxes that we can implement. So I would urge you to at least take off marijuana from this surtax. I think it's just putting out a bad message and taxing something that is currently getting 0% tax on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Last chance, last call. Okay, we'll move along then to chairpersons and representatives of boards of commissions, CCMC Advisory Board.
Greg Meyer, CCMC Advisory Board. I guess start with the PERS. We got our final bill recently. It was 59,000. We kind of budgeted 90,000, so it was a little bit less. So we asked in September, we asked for 1.145 million, and it looks like we needed 1.013, so 132 less than we asked for a month or so ago. And that's mainly because we had a $135,000 credit from some IRS thing with the state. So anyway, we were pretty close on that. I feel good about that. Talks with MVE are going good. Just had a meeting with Bert. Their facility assessment is almost done, and they'll be bringing a guy here to Cordova on the 26th of this month to show us the code and condition deficiencies that they found. They weren't major, but there are some, such as handicapped restrooms near the clinic, couple exits downstairs. There's only one. There's supposed to be two. HVAC system is in need of quite a bit of assistance. And some switching gear on the generators and a bunch of outdated equipment. Anyway, he's going to be here on the 26th to show us what they found and give us updated facility drawings that they completed. And they're almost done with their financial assessment. Should be another week or two. They'll have that done. I'm actually going to Anchorage with Bert on December 5th to talk to their financial backers to see how they're coming on this. But so far, everything's going well. And I think one point I want to emphasize with the employees is that we're putting a lot of effort into making sure that no one loses their job, that all the jobs are filled with the people we have here. So just want to try to reassure them on that. And we should have our budget done. Well, we have our budget done. We just have to get it approved at our next meeting. So I think we're supposed to have ours done before you guys are. So do you guys know when that's going to be?
18th of December, the December, 2nd December meeting.
Okay, I think we have our meeting on the 16th or 14th, so we should do that. So, any questions?
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. School board, Barb, escape on us? Oh, there you are.
Barb Jewell, Chair, Cordova School Board. I wanted to start by certainly talking about our appreciation again for the time that the City Council took to meet with us to review budgets and budget cycles and processes and things like that. So thanks. Almost everyone made it, and we appreciated the conversation. Wanted to let you know that we did have a work session where we clarified our board goals for the upcoming year. And just want to let you know what those are. Not in any particular order. These are just our 4 priorities for this coming year. Advocacy at both the local, state, and federal level. Working more on defining and implementing a better curriculum review and adoption process as we continue to look for additional classes and courses and curriculum and projects for students. We want to make sure that we have appropriate oversight of the curriculum and materials that are used in the district. It's really going to focus on making sure we have a good process for that. We're going to work on identifying facility needs knowing that we have an older building. We want to be up in front of any surprises when it comes to facility needs. We want to come to a deep understanding of where we stand with our buildings and what we think are going to be priorities going forward, probably for the next 5 years. And then the last is intentional communication, making sure that we are reaching out to students, parents, community members, state officials, federal officials, about what we're doing here in Cordova, so that when it comes time to making decisions about money, people have better information about how to allocate resources. Any questions about that? We definitely looked at some of the challenges that we have facing us, and the physical space is one. Our technology and ability to modernize our coursework is another. A big one is recruiting staff. This was the first year in the 10 years that I've lived in Cordova where we have had unfilled positions because we could not recruit qualified staff. That's kind of an eye-opener for us. And I would offer that the situation in the city always affects our ability to recruit and retain staff. So that's why we come here and we can continue these conversations, and we hope that you'll continue them with us, because the quality of the community is what helps us recruit and retain our staff. Our fundraising for the activities has gone well. I wish I could remember the exact amount that we raised, but I think it's about $45,000. So we're pretty excited about that. And it goes a ways towards closing that $100,000 gap that we believe we have because of the increase in travel costs. Usually our student rep is here to tell you more about what the students are doing, but the volleyball tournament is coming up. The swimmers did really well, and we had a student shave a big chunk of time off his state competition time. Dave can probably tell you more about that. And we're looking forward to our Christmas concerts coming up in the next few weeks. Any questions? Thank you.
Barb. Okay, there's a planning commission resolution, capital improvement list. Do you have anything else on that, Leif?
Just a comment on that, and
Sure,
then
go ahead.
And I might talk about it during pending agenda, but I think we need to start looking at our water situation as far as a new source and stuff. So I'll address that at pending agenda. But I was kind of surprised that that wasn't on planning and zoning's list, but maybe we haven't given the encouragement to look at that either.
Okay. Okay, we don't have a student council rep here tonight. I believe he's at the music festival or state music competition up there in Anchorage. So the consent calendar is before you.
Dave Gleason,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Jeff Guard.
Yes.
Consent calendar approved.
Move to approve the minutes from 11/6/19 council regular meeting.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We don't have any bids. The mayor's report. There was a request from Peterson to co-sponsor an AML resolution. Didn't we talk about that a little bit last time? We okay the representative to vote on that? I don't have anything from the mayor at all, so.
This is Melina.
Yeah, go ahead, Melina.
I think with this resolution as well as, is council willing to put our name on it to co-sponsor it? Not just vote on it.
Does anybody have an objection to putting our name
No, I think we
On it?
talked
No, we
about that at
talked-
the last
yeah.
meeting.
I think we talked about it at the last meeting. Yeah, we're all good with, we're all good here with, putting our name on that.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was asked for, is just to make sure that every council is good with putting our name on it, so I can let them know up here to put our name on it to co-sponsor it.
Yep, there was no objection from the table here for doing that, so.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Baylor.
So just a little history on that. I think in the past, there's been some letters that went out to different businesses and other places that council did not get to look at it. So I think we as a group had asked, so this is probably what this is. So I appreciate it that it came back to us for our consent.
Sure, thank you, yep. Okay, moving on to the manager's report. Manager Howarth.
I am in Anchorage at the Municipal League Conference. I did not submit a written report, so I don't have really anything to say other than I wish that I was here 2 weeks ago so that a lot of the information that I'm getting and all the good knowledge from my peers could help influence some of the conversations we're having, but that'll wait. So we'll move on and I'll pass this along to the next report.
Okay, thank you. Yep, soak it all up. Okay, city clerk's report.
Susan and I were attending the clerks conference at AML. Unfortunately, she had a family emergency and had to leave, but she was there for a few days. It was good to be there. I have never gone before, so it was nice visiting with the other clerks and seeing what they got going. They had some very good conferences there. That's it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, correspondence. Any comments on
Yeah.
any of those? Councilmember Baylor?
Yeah, I do on the in-kind and the landfill. Just throwing it out there. I don't know, it'd be a topic of discussion, maybe our city manager could speak to him, but was the thought of ever, they're gonna have to break these vessels down, right? Was the thought of ever just piling that scrap metal up on the Northville like we did once before and getting somebody to come and get it? Or I know NV has a barge, is it, or if we're looking at, it's gonna be a cost of $15,000, what would it take to just ship that up to Anchorage to get rid of it, period? I don't know if that was ever looked at, so just kind of throwing that out there.
Yeah, the staff can correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe Helen knows, but I believe they're stacking the scrap metal that can be shipped out at some point in time. They're just stacking that at the landfill right now. And then when a barge does schedule to come in, then they'll bring
Yeah,
it all and stack. I don't think we necessarily want to stack it down on the Northville for
I mean, can we get rid
a
of
year or
it?
2 years.
No, right away in conjunction with
Oh.
taking these, so that was just a question. Or is this gonna be a long-term thing, boat after boat after boat? Is that what we're looking at? Yeah.
No, I think what happened is this request came in, so we were basically putting the packet together, so we didn't have time to really have a conversation with the watershed project or with our staff to kind of really understand the full scope of it. So it will just get deferred. We'll have more information and we'll be able to answer the questions that you guys have in order to make a decision.
Thank you.
Yeah, the letter stated that their grant was due 4th of December. Is that correct? Is that person still here?
Yeah,
Yes.
I can speak to that, and I did chat with one of the interested parties, and I said, based on my knowledge of grants, is that if you put in your grant request that it's a pending match, they'll defer to that. At least it demonstrates that you have made an inquiry and that you have identified a possible source and that it's pending approval. So it should not impact their ability to submit a grant request. They may or may not get funded, and and depending on the action of the grant source that they're approaching, we may or may not be able to do this part of the grant. So I don't think it's going to impact anything, and then all of us will be more informed with more information.
Okay, we may indeed be able to have a meeting. Our first December meeting is The 3rd? What day is the first Wednesday? 3rd, 4th, something like that?
was the 4th.
I think it's the
Might be the
Oh,
4th, but we might,
Yeah.
we'll talk about it depending agenda, when we're gonna discuss it, but we might have a special meeting before then too for these other ordinances, so that they can be in effect by the 1st of the year, so. I would just like to state on the, not that it's been any, controversial thing or anything, but the community college, I used to work for them, haven't for a number of years, but it's a huge benefit to our students, and we're very lucky to have the community college being so close. You know, Cordova's a small community anyway, so nothing's very far away, but having it in the school system or on their property is a big advantage too. I was recently at a conference of the school boards, and I'll address that later during council comments, but many school districts in our state are trying to just get 1 or 2 classes with dual credit classes with the university system, and we're lucky that a lot of our kids do. You know, I mean, they were talking about kids having 4 or 5 credits by the time they graduated, and I was just kind of laughing because my daughter had 45 when she graduated, and she was 5 of her classmates graduated with their AA before they graduated from high school. So big advantage to our kids in our community, and I think we need to continue to support that. Public meeting notice, White Shed Road thing. Coming up, anything else? Any other comments on the correspondence? Melanie, you'll have to just jump in if we can't see your arm up there, so if there's anything you want
All right, will do.
to chime in on here. Okay, the next item is ordinance 1178. Councilmember Meyer has a conflict. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, amending Cordova Municipal Code, Section 5.40.012 to add marijuana, marijuana concentrates, marijuana products, cigarettes, tobacco products, and alcoholic beverages to the list of sales subject to a 6% surtax, and amending 5.40.020 to add definitions of each. First reading.
So
To
moved.
approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. Who made the motion? Baylor?
I'll yield.
Whoever. Go ahead, Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, so this is one that, you know, we talked about in the workshops, and I said I would support. And I wish we had the information in front of us in the packet that we had a few years ago when we had Chief Hicks in here and some representatives from the hospital, and we asked them the questions, you know, how much of our police and EMS calls are associated with alcohol consumption, and the number was astounding. It was 60-some%. I don't have the exact figure in my mind, but I do remember that, and I wish that was in our packet for the public to see. And then again, you know, some of the house fires that we've had in the past have been lit by cigarettes and trash cans and those sort of associated things. And then our cost at the ER is, I can't remember the figure, but I remember it being pretty considerable, especially in the summer months when we have a large transient population in town. And so for those reasons, I would support adding these to the list of items subject to a 6% surtax.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Gleason.
Yeah, that's pretty much, I would say that the people that are selling marijuana now are doing it illegally. So that's why we're not collecting sales tax on it. I am in favor of this, and for the reasons that Ken mentioned, so.
Anybody else? Councilmember?
Yeah, I'll echo those comments, and also just, this is the first reading, so for the public, where we'll be taking comment again on this. So just want to let everybody understand that.
Any other comments?
To your left.
And he's got,
Oh, go ahead.
So I forgot one thing. I guess I would just ask that when this comes back, or if this comes back for a second reading, maybe those figures could be provided by staff for our next packet. I'm sure
Yes,
that,
yes, got a note.
awesome, thank you.
Call for the question.
Okay, question be called. This is a voice vote. It's first reading, so all those in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item 17, ordinance 1179. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, amending Cordova Municipal Code, Section 5.40.010, to impose seasonal sales tax rates of 5% in winter and 8% in summer of each year.
So moved.
Second?
second.
Been moved and seconded. Councilmember?
So I'm in favor of this. I've talked to several people in the community, and this was the most popular choice. And I did hear Jim's comments, and my answer to that is that this is a different council, and we discussed that being a concern of the population, and that's not going to happen. So I am in favor of this version over the next version. Don't we have two of these three?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Okay, who was the second? Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, I would just like to say that we're in a bind, especially with the budget that was passed this year at the state level. It's really affected the city budget with the school bond debt reimbursement that wasn't funded fully, and so that's just right there is $500,000 that all of a sudden the city had to account for. That wasn't part of the plan originally, so it wasn't poor planning. It was at a state level. So just to account for these new constraints with the state level, we're trying to come up with ways to raise funds for the city without it, becoming an overdue burden on the citizens. And so in talking to a lot of people, I've also found that most people that I've talked to have supported the seasonal sales tax of 5% in the winter, 8% in the summer, to try and capture a little more revenue from those people that come here in the summer. They fish, they use our harbor, they use our roads, but they don't stay here through the winter. They don't have homes here. They don't have kids in our schools. So try and get a little extra revenue from people that are just coming in the summer. So I'm in support of Ordinance 1179.
Further discussion? Councilmember Baylor?
Yeah, I'm actually going to speak in support of both of these ordinances. So my intent was to get more public input. I was hoping that we would get a little bit more, and maybe we will on the next go around. I did take it upon myself to call a couple businesses, and the first thing that was out of this gentleman's mouth was, well, we tried this once before, it was 3 and 6, and then it stayed at 6. So there's that distrust. So they would just assume keep it at 7. I didn't really get any input on as far as is it a pain for the businesses to do the switch? It seems like some of that discussion was with today's computers is not such a big deal. Myself, I keep going back and forth. I was first for the 7, then I went back to the split, and so I'm really up in the air which one I'm going to support, but I hope we get some more input.
Kind of a lot of what went on by the commenters before me, the council members before me, but the reason we did put both of these ordinances on here was to find out what was more palatable from the community. We went through this a couple of years ago, and the outcome wasn't quite optimal. We don't really have a lot of time to figure this out before we have to submit a balanced budget for next year. So the reason we put both these on here is to spark some comments from the community to figure out exactly how the community wants to do it. I think it makes sense to try to collect a few of those that come in the summer that we have to build up an infrastructure to support, but they don't stay here year round to pay for it. But they can live with either one. We just need to find out what's most palatable from the community. So let us know.
This is Helen. I just want to make one comment that the budget implication, it's really similar between those two. So we'll be able to put a balanced budget together before you guys make a final decision on which direction you want to go. The other thing I want to let you know is that our attorney did advise that rather than try to expedite this and cram the first and second reading into a short amount of time, that especially with these kinds of impactful resolutions or ordinances, that we should probably go ahead and use our process of having the 30 days and giving a little bit more time. So I throw that out to you. We can go in any direction, but that was our attorney's advice, just to prevent it from looking like council wasn't taking the time needed to get the public's feedback on that. So I will share that information and let you know that we can make it work either way. And then the amount that both of these impact the budget in a really similar way. They're thousands of dollars, just a few $1,000s off.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Helen, Tom Baylor. So, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. So when we discussed this on a workshop, I think some of the recommendations or thoughts were thrown out that we contact the chamber and the chamber reach out to some businesses, get their preference and thoughts. Did that happen? Do you know?
I have not done that in the kind of way that I think we should. So when I get back on the first part of December, we're going to dig in deep and spend a lot of time boots on the ground getting the feedback that we need to give you guys the information to make the right decision.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's, I guess my comments are similar to what's already been said. For this evening on first reading, I'm going to support both ordinances. I think it's perfectly acceptable for us to move both of them forward. On second reading, I would not recommend to pass them both because there'll be a conflict at that point in time. But on this first reading, to get more thoughts from the community, especially the people who are our partners in collecting this data. I too have talked to minimal number, I would say half a dozen different businesses, and they're kind of split on it as well. I think they would all prefer to get more money from the seasonal people. I didn't hear, and I specifically asked if this is a big deal to their computer system or their accounting systems, and that wasn't the big deal. The biggest issue was the trusting thing, whether it was going to really go back to 5. I was here when they did the 3-6 split, and yeah, that's what people are going to stick with. And I appreciate Councilmember Gleason saying that this council has said that they're not, but unfortunately this council, or maybe fortunately, but this council won't be the same after March next year, and the year after that it'll be a little more different, and within 3 or 4, 6 years it will be completely different, and they might have a different idea. So it is a risk out there, but make it all 7. It is a risk that the council might decide to make it 8 anyway. So I think that's we need to make sure that the community is seeing our efforts to rein in costs as well, and to do our best job at minimizing the effects of the actions that we take. So yeah, I think if we show that we're doing the best that we can, my opinion with this $500,000 is that amount that the state is not giving us for the bond debt, and I see 3, maybe 4 avenues of paying for that One is the permanent fund, but now we've kind of used that as a buffer for whether or not we get the forest receipts this year or not. We're putting in forest receipts, so we can't do that and take money from the permanent fund for the same item twice. So that's not really an option. So we raise property tax. Well, I would rather get it from seasonal people more and doing the sales tax than just raise property tax. So then my question to them is the 5.8 better or is 7 better? And quite honestly, I got 3 of each of the 6 people I talked to, or 6 businesses I talked to. All of them were business owners, couple of restaurants and a couple of others. They were split on it, but the people that didn't like the 5.8 liked the 5.8, but didn't believe that we would keep it at 5.8. So I think they preferred the 5.8. So I'm leaning towards the 5.8. Depending on comments, I may not support either one in the end, but for now, I'm going to support them both to move them forward and hope that we get the chamber involved in getting us some information. We get the public involved in at least making some comments, whether those be written or coming to our meetings and commenting. Want to hear the comments and the positives or negatives before we end up having to bring this to a vote, because come May, if we still have a $500,000 hole in our budget, we've only got one option, and that's to add to the mill rate, and I don't want to do that. So, any other comments, Councilmember Gleason?
So that school bond debt reimbursement that our state administration added to our budget, that's going to be every year until the grade school's paid for. And possibly worse, we have no idea what he's going to do for next year's budget. So we're trying to plan ahead for more damage.
Just one more quick comment on the mistrust that happened before, the 3 to 6 and stayed at 6. And I get that, but I think in this day and age with we're on TV, we're recorded, you got Facebook, we got a website, it's so much easier for people to stay informed. And I think if we've tried to pull a stunt like that, we'd have a room full of people down here. I think back in the day, things happened that you didn't hear about it till a month later, it was enacted, from council, unless you actually went to a meeting. So, things can happen, but I kind of set that aside. People can stay well informed at this day and age, so.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yep, I was just turned off mute to say something. Yeah, I'm more in support of the seasonal tax split from the people that I talked to. Seems like that was more of a way to go about things, and I guess I'm looking at this tax, keeping in mind looking into the gross receipts tax. I really am interested in creating a different tax structure for Cordova. I kind of think currently we use all of our taxing. We have pretty high property tax, pretty high sales tax as far as the state goes, and just all around we kind of use a little bit of every tax. So I would like to look into the gross receipts tax really heavily this next year, but that doesn't help with our short-term 2020 budget, what we need to do. So I wouldn't be in favor of doing this split and then even a year down the line changing it to 8% across the board. But with that said, other municipalities are raising taxes at the same time. We're not the only ones in this position right now, but I'm more in favor of the seasonal tax.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilmember Jones?
Yeah, so I've been sitting over here quietly trying to collect my thoughts on what exactly I wanted to say on this. And, you know, when we were going through our workshops, I said I could possibly support something like this and I went on to say that I thought more could be done regarding cuts and that I wanted to see that as well. And I haven't seen that yet. I suggested rolling back the hospital gift every year to the amount that we gave them last year instead of raising it 300,000. That was not received well. And I've heard a lot of comments regarding, oh, well, the state cut the bond debt reimbursement. Well, what I haven't heard is, yeah, that might have been 450 or 500,000. What's the other 400,000? We got renegotiated with the union, and it blew a $400,000 hole in our budget, and nobody's talking about that. I think that our staffing costs are too high for a city of our size, and I think that we can do more to become a more efficient organization. And so, you know, for those reasons, I'm actually going to vote no on these because I just haven't seen us move in a way to look at cuts, and there is cuts that could be made. I appreciate that they rolled back an officer position that we haven't been able to fill for 3 or 4 years. And I think that there's possibly more that can be done with keeping unfilled positions unfilled. Not necessarily firing anybody, but there are positions that are unfilled currently, and I think that they could go unfilled, and that could help. It's not going to solve the problem. We just voted forward a tax that's going to raise $160,000 with the surtax on luxury items, and then we talked a lot about fish tax. And the last 3 years since I've been on council, it's a budget fiasco every year. Oh no, it's the sky is falling. We need to raise taxes. Well, we were under budgeting our fish tax for every single one of those years, and I know we talked about that, and we voted to raise that, and so that helped with our shortfall as well, and I appreciate that. I don't think we actually voted on it. We just kind of gave concurrence to the manager to adjust that line item in the budget. And you know, there was one year where we budgeted $750,000, we got $1.16 million. Then we budgeted $900,000, we got $1.56 million. Where did that money go? I still haven't got a straight answer from anybody. And it was, you know, just in the last 3 years, there's been $1 million of fish tax that was supposed to go to savings, so that way we could offset a bad year in the future. And currently, our cash reserves are no better off than when I was elected. And so that cash has just been spent. I know some of it went to debt that we weren't even told about. Some of it went to the hospital that we weren't told about. And, you know, it's very frustrating to me sitting here as a conservative-minded person to try to vote for these taxes when I know there's more that can be done on the cut side. And so for that reason, I'm going to vote no tonight.
Other comments?
As far as the cuts and stuff go, we've got a new city manager. To ask a brand-new city manager that just got hired and getting their feet on the ground to come in and start suggesting these kind of cuts to an organization that may not be stripped all the way down, but has been stripped quite a bit in the last 3 or 4 years. We're down 8 positions or something from when you and I started on council. But anyway, I don't know that that's a fair thing to ask of her in this short a time period. And the fact is, the budget's got to be done here soon. We've got to submit a balanced budget. So I don't think that there are any issues with looking at the things you want to look at. I just think looking at them in the time frame we've got to put together a balanced budget isn't really a doable deal.
Go ahead, Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, a couple more thoughts. Yeah, we did strip the budget down in 2016 pretty aggressively in 1 year with a new manager, $2 million in a month. And since then, I believe $1 million's been added back in over time. It's creeped back up. So we're not at the bare bones budget that you keep talking about. It has gone up since we went to that bare bones budget. And that's what I'm, I guess, suggesting is that we could still go back. Another thing that I would like council to keep in mind is that right now, the legislature, well, maybe not right now, but in about a month and a half, they're going to be reconvening and they're going to be talking about a state sales tax, which would be levied on top of any sales tax we do. So if we go to 8% and then they decide to do a 3 or a 4%, then all of a sudden we're taking 10% for sales tax. There's over 200 taxes that the average American pays today, not including just regular fees. It's just ridiculous. You know, our forefathers fought a war of independence against this kind of taxation, and yeah, I just can't get behind raising taxes upon raising taxes when we could be making cuts. And you know, every department in the city is driving around a brand new pickup truck. We got a brand new dump truck, or you know, brand new truck for hauling garbage. And they got a brand new plow and a brand new sander when their old one worked fine. In fact, if they go to sell it, I'm going to buy it. It's just ridiculous. You know, some of us in the harbor are fishing like you, Jeff. You're fishing 40-year-old equipment and it works just fine. You just got to take care of your stuff, maintain it properly, and it'll last for years. And I just don't like this whole throw it away mentality where we just need to buy a new one every 10 years because it's worn out and it only has 60,000 miles and it's still a perfectly fine pickup truck. I appreciate that a lot of the enterprise funds bought them out of their reserves, and I said that when we passed those. But yeah, I think that there's still things that could be cut, especially when you drive around and you see stuff like that. And you know, we raised property tax this spring. I know we like to pat ourselves on the back and say, oh, well, we kept the mill rate stagnant. Yeah, well, everybody's assessments went up 5, 10%, 20%. So sales tax did go, or sorry, property tax did already go up this year. And we talked about that when we were talking about raising the school, you know, back up to the amount that they were at. And that's why we chose to do that. And I supported that. Instead of dropping it down, like we had also discussed, is, you know, lowering the mill rate to keep that revenue goal the same. We chose to keep the mill rate the same, and it actually raised that revenue goal. And so we've already raised property tax this year, and we just passed forward a luxury tax. And our water, sewer, garbage, you know, we're doing 5% a year for the next 4 years. We did one year last year for 5% and another 4 years. So we're just raising the cost of living, and I go on and on. I yield.
Yeah, I don't disagree with most of what Councilmember Jones is saying. I think most of the unbudgeted revenues in the past several years have gone to the hospital. A majority of those have. When we budget $400,000 for the hospital and we end up giving them $1.2 million, or we budgeted, what we budget last year, $600,000, and not counting the permanent fund, we gave them quite a bit more than that this year. I wouldn't be against cutting them for next year. I think we discussed that the last meeting. I think we need to get a budget before us and start making motions on different pieces and seeing where it goes. Because I would certainly support reducing the hospital's take. Hopefully we can have a solution for that and not need to spend a whole year's worth. Anyway, I think we divide when we budget for the hospital and the schools. I think we divide that out in monthly payments to them. They don't get the whole amount the first day of the year. We budget that out because we got our revenues over time as well. So I would support that. I still think that we either need to take money out of our permanent fund or do something with the taxes. I would support certainly looking into the gross receipts tax. I think we need good information on that before we actually make a change to that. But I would certainly want to see any options that can reduce the tax burden for the year-round residents and make everybody else pay. But yeah, I don't disagree with, we ought to be able to run this city on $10 million a year, general fund, and we seem to have a hard time getting below 11.5, or, you know, and, yeah, I don't see it, but then I recognize that, we need to give our manager time to get into it, but we didn't give the last manager any time, so, I could be swayed.
Can I
either
make
way.
a comment? This is Helen. I'm hearing everything you guys are saying and totally agreeing with you. The difference, my approach is maybe a little different than the last round when you were doing a lot of cuts, because I am more than willing to make informed cuts that will allow us to maintain services to the community at the level that you all agree should be provided, and provide those services efficiently and effectively. And if you want me to just make cuts, I think I should use this analogy at the last meeting, is I don't know which arms and legs to cut off yet. And I would prefer not to approach budget cuts that way. So the other thing is I think there are some revenue options that we can and should pursue. I just chatted with some folks in coastal communities that are imposing impact taxes on industries that have impact during a short period of time in the year, like the tourism industry with the big cruise ships. There's impact taxes that some communities are choosing to apply for the duration of the time that those businesses are ramping up or are impacting the community in a significant way, either through increased uses of utilities or water or whatever. So that's something I want to explore, and as Melina suggested, and others of you have as well, I'm looking at the gross receipts taxes. So I would like some time to really look at our budget, building it from the ground up rather than cutting from the top down. And I would like to be able to look at revenue options. And I think if we start right now with that dialogue next year, when this budget, when a budget comes before you again, we're not going to be in this situation. We will have a solution that is more aligned with what you're describing as a need to kind of rein in spending, but provide services effectively, and or right sizing the services. Maybe we don't have certain things. Maybe you all decide, you know what, we just can't do this or that anymore. But it's hard to for me to think about cutting in not understanding how those cuts will have impacts on services. So I appreciate you all giving me time to do this in a methodical and proactive way that will give the community the results they're looking for, and you as council the results you're looking for.
Thank you, Ellen. There was a couple other hands up here. No? No more?
I think, yeah, I guess both Councilman Jones and our city manager had good points, so I'm still going to vote to move these forward to get more information and more public input.
Okay, any other comments on this? I appreciate your comments there too, Helen. I think the mistake that council made the last time, I considered a mistake anyway, was we asked for a 10% cut to the budget and didn't give any direction as to what fingers or arms we wanted cut made to, and we ended up in some trouble by the end of the year, and that some of the things that were cut were things that were mandatory or required or part of somebody's contract, and we ended up having to pay, and I think that's how the price got back up like it has now. I don't think we're any less now than we were 2 years ago. That was part of the 3-year plan, was to get back to where we were in 2016. Anyway, I trust that Helen, you will look at all options and we'll get a budget before us that we can look at and maybe make some motions to make some changes or move it on, but we'll get this done by the end of the year either way. Any other comments on the ordinances?
Just one more.
Councilmember Gleason?
I was just going to say Kenny was 100% right on everything he said there, but that didn't get past us. We noticed that the raw fish tax was gone, and it did get spent without telling us. We weren't told when it got spent, and we are rectifying that problem. And also the negotiations for the city contracts, the union stuff, we see a signed agreement. So by the time we see it, it's a done deal. We're going to try to make that so that doesn't happen without us knowing it either, because that hurt. So I just don't want the public to think that we're just letting that go. That's not the case. We've already talked about that stuff, and we are going to try to repair that. But it's behind us now, so we're stuck with that bill, and we do have to pay it. So that's why I'm still in favor of these. I believe Kenny's right, but that kind of stuff is going to have to happen over time. We need this money now. So I am in favor of this, and I'm also in favor of what Kenny's saying. But we need to figure out some revenue now. So
I have a question for you, Helen.
Yes.
And I don't know if you approached it with when you talked to the attorneys about the date of this, et cetera. Can we could, if we wanted to, put an effective date of April 1st, first day of the second quarter, or,
Right.
to start it at
There's
a given
no,
quarter?
And what the attorney was suggesting is that rather than trying to rush this through and have it in place on January 1st, which there was some conversation about, we can just go through our more normal process and put it in place whenever it's most appropriate. The one thing that was discussed was that if we did it in April, we would lose the reduction. If for instance, you guys chose the seasonal sales tax, the community would not benefit from the 5% sales tax in the first quarter.
Right, I realize that, but I don't want to have the businesses calculate 6% for January and then 5% for February and March and 8% for
Right. Yeah.
next 3 months.
How it gets implemented is certainly something to be considered.
Okay, maybe you can research that.
I know, and I forgot to mention this. The attorney got back to me after this packet went out, but it is possible. I think someone had suggested maybe dedicate these sales taxes to school, hospital, or whatever it is, so that people felt that there was a relationship between the increase and some of the things that they hold dear, and that is certainly something that could be put in play. I know that would require then another first and second reading, but something that could be done.
Okay, Councilmember Jones.
Well, just on that topic of adding this is for the school or into these. The only reason we're even allowed to collect property tax is because we have a school district. Property tax is for the school district. We already tax real property in this community more than what we give the school district. So I would completely disagree with trying to pass a new tax or an increase on an old tax in the name of funding the school, because we already collect more tax off real property than we give to the school. And the only reason we're even allowed to collect that tax is because we have a school district. So I guess maybe for the hospital, hopefully that thing gets a solution here soon.
Okay, Councilmember Guard.
What gives us authorization to collect a property tax is being in a position of having a school district. But that's not the only thing that money is dedicated for. It doesn't say we can only spend it on that, because we still have to come up with water, sewer, roads, all that stuff, so people can get to the schools, use the schools, public safety stuff. So it's not just the schools that property tax were intended to use for. They just have a threshold on whether or not, so nobody can go out, or they don't want to set it up so anybody can go out and make a property tax deal wherever they are, if they incorporate into a city or whatever.
Call for the question, ordinance 1179.
Second.
We're ready to vote? Okay, it's voice vote on first reading, so all those in favor of ordinance 1179, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Ordinance 1180, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, amending Chapter 5.40.010 to adopt a 1% increase to the general sales tax imposed by the City of Cordova. On
So
first
moved.
reading.
Second.
And just to be clear, this is not in addition to ordinance 1179. It's gonna be one or the other in the end. So, maker of the motion,
It's just it'd make it 7% all year instead of the 5 and the 8. So, and when we crunch the numbers, like Helen was saying, I think one of them was 525,000, the other one was like 520,000. So I do like that they're real similar. So either way, we get to where we're trying to get.
So I think all the same debate and questions and answers and opinions that we had on the previous ordinance go to this one. I think the whole idea was to get through a first reading and get more public input to see who's going to support this. So I'm going to support it for that reason.
okay, any other comments? Carry forward all the comments from the last ordinance to this one. Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, just one point I'd like to clarify for Councilmember Guard is the fact that water, sewer, and refuse are all enterprise funds that pay their own way, and we voted 25% increase over the next 5 years already. That's implemented. Those are going up 5% a year to pay their own way. So increasing the sales tax is not going to affect those services whatsoever. Streets, sure. This is mainly just going to get eaten up by gifts to other organizations and bureaucratic spending at City Hall. And for those reasons, I will not be supporting this.
Point well taken, but just as a point of clarification, the 5% increase per year is not a done deal until we pass the budget each year. It went up 5% last year, it'll go up 5% this year if we pass the budget. As is, so.
The fee schedule.
Yeah, the fee schedule, yeah. Any other comments? This? Hearing none, all those in favor of ordinance 1180, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. First reading. Next meeting, we will have public hearing on both of those, and hopefully we can get some input from the chamber. Helen, you will work on that?
Yes, I'll follow up with that and others.
Okay, thank you. And those out there in Radio Land, please send council your comments or come to the meeting next time and give us your comments on those if you have feelings one way or the other. No unfinished business?
Oop, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah, I would move to approve the mayor's appointment to take, oh, well, she got me screwed there. I move to appoint the mayor's appointments to commissions for appointment of the following: Mary Ann Bishop to the library board for term through November 2022. Nancy Bird and Mark Hall to the planning commission for terms through November 2022. Karen Hallquist, Marvin Vanderbroek, and Helen, somebody help me out there.
Hank Krutoff?
Krutoff?
Yeah,
Alright.
Hank.
Hein
Krutoff.
Kruk.
To the Parks and Rec Commission for terms through November 2022.
Second.
You moved and seconded. Were you finished with your motion? Is that-
Yes.
Okay. Any comments on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, he made the
Go ahead.
motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I really appreciate some of these candidates, like Mark Hall to the Planning Commission. He's got survey experience, so that's definitely putting the right person in the right place. That's really helpful. We also have somebody that has a Parks and Rec background, and that's really helpful. So when you put the right people in the right place for these commissions, that really helps staff, the city, and the community. And of course, all these other people have a long history of helping out. Mary Ann Bishop, Nancy Bird, Marv Vanderick, and Karen. So appreciate all of them to put their name in, and I think those were good choices.
Okay, any other,
I have a
Member
question.
Shaver.
I have a question and a comment. Question, did you not want to include the Harbor Commission and Historic?
That'll be the next motion.
Okay. Okay, then I will wait on I guess I can say I resigned from the Parks and Rec Commission per the request of the mayor because there were 2 vacant seats and 3 people submitted letters of interest wanting to be on the Parks and Rec Commission. And just in the spirit of trying to encourage further input from like a wider range of people, I resigned to give more of an opportunity for that. So we often have a hard time filling those seats. And so when people do step up and they want to participate and they want to have a say and a voice, I think it's valuable to encourage that. And I mean, I can still attend Parks and Rec meetings if I want to, and I can be involved, and I can be involved at the council level as well. So that was why I resigned, and I think that was the reasoning behind, I'm sure, the Harbor Commission nomination as well.
I appreciate that. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Councilmember Baylor.
Well,
What did you have?
I would move to appoint to the Harbor Commission Andy Craig and Kenneth Jones to the Harbor Commission for terms through November 2022. Oh, I guess I forgot this other one. And Sylvia Lang and Kathy Sherman to the Historical Preservation Commission.
Second.
Who was seconded? Councilmember Baylor.
Okay, well, I appreciate Councilman Schaefer's setting aside on the Parks and Rec, and I think that was the right thing to do at that time. I think the difference here is the harbor, we're looking at a multi-million dollar project here, and redoing that harbor is very important to this community. And with that being said, having somebody that's basically been at the start of the planning of this is very important. Somebody that's down there, that's using it, has really good insight on this. I wish he'd share his opinion more, but but I think he's a good asset. The other thing is the Harbor Commissioner, Tony Chanella, asked me, please put this gentleman back on. And that says a lot because he's helping staff through that. We also have an ordinance here that we passed, and this has been discussed many times. Back when I served my first term on the council there, we kind of talked about this because at the time I was a council member and as well as served on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I did step aside. The upside of that, though, is we were pretty well informed on what was going on the Harbor Commission, and as we are well informed, this was going on the Planning and Zoning, and Harbor Commission. But the ordinance, the substitute ordinance 1115, it states, where it is in the city's best interest to permit but not require council members to be appointed to the commission during their service as council members. All right, so it kind of gives us a lot, speaks to that. And then under Harbor Commission, under section B there, it says, let me get my spot here. One of the commission members may be designated by the council from its numbers. All right. Members not designated from the council from its numbers shall be nominated by the mayor and confirmed by the council. It also speaks that, you have to be a member of you have to be a member of the city of Cordova, resident and all that. And this also speaks to that just because you're on council, it doesn't preclude you from being that. So We had a lot of discussion on this, and we put the word may in there for just this reason. Maybe we won't get somebody to apply, we'll be shortage, then we could put somebody on. In this case, we got somebody, I think that's a great asset to it, so we have that ability to put somebody on. So I would encourage you to honor the request from our harbor master and move this forward.
The second? Who was the second?
Me.
You want to comment, or?
I'd just say, well put.
Councilmember Guard?
I think that Councilmember Jones has been a great asset on the Harbor Commission. I think he has been a driving force again for things that have been happening down there that we've needed to see for a long time. But we talked about, well, you weren't on the council. We took up that ordinance and talked about it with legal counsel, and there are some questions about whether you can take two bites at the same apple, being on a border commission. We never did completely bring anything to fruition. It was one of the things that we talked about, worked on, and then immediately ran off to the next disaster du jour. But one thing we talked about being an option of wanting to keep as close a contact between boards and commissions and council as we could, is putting an ex officio position in there from the council to where we'd get by the issue of maybe having legal improprieties from getting to vote on the same issue twice from some council members as compared to other council members. So anybody that was an ex officio member from the council would have full rights to debate, discuss, and do all that. They just wouldn't have a voting seat on it. And I wonder if that may be the way to go on this. Because I certainly don't want to see Kenny moved away or taken away from the Harbor Commission. I just want to make sure we got all our bases covered. So do you see that? Can I ask Councilmember Jones a question sitting in the
Your
audience?
prerogative as a council member,
Okay.
unless there's objection from the table.
Nobody needs to come to the, so the people on the phone can hear.
Okay. What problems do you see with that approach? Citizen Jones.
You know, I agree that we should have a council member on every commission. That used to be the way it was done, whether it's ex officio or voting. I don't think it necessarily matters as much. Of course, I'd prefer to have a vote, but I think we need to move forward with having a council member on every commission as an ex officio, maybe not just for the harbor. I think that's a great way for us to stay more informed on what these commissions are doing. We get reporting in the packets, but it's not the same as getting a verbal report from somebody who's been in the trenches, so to speak. And if that's the way you guys want to go, then I'd be happy to serve as an ex officio seat on there. I just know that in the last few years, when we're putting together packets, it seems like I'm the only one ever bringing together agenda items, and it's frustrating at times to get people to show up. I know I have struggles showing up because I'm a very busy fisherman in the summer, and for that reason, that commission doesn't meet in the summer because the majority of its members are fishermen. But yeah, no, if that's the way you guys want to go, I'd be happy to serve in that capacity. I'd also be happy to serve as a regular voting member, and that's what I was seeking when I submitted my letter of interest.
Go ahead, Tom, and then I'll take my turn.
Okay. So having this ex officio, haven't been in that position, haven't seen our former mayor in that position, it's very tough with all the meetings council people put in, time that we put in, and then to turn around and go to a Parks and Rec meeting or Plan and Zoning meeting or a Harbor Commission meeting when you get to sit there. You don't really get to partake. It kind of adds a whole nother level of interest when you actually get to sit at the table and partake in these conversations, be able to bring things forward, be able to sit down with the harbor master. As a commissioner, you get to go in and sit down with the harbor master and discuss what's going to be on the agenda. Harbor doesn't really, they move things forward. You're concerned about having two votes. All they do is recommend to the harbor commissioner. they don't really vote on that. Unlike the Planning and Zoning Commission, where you're actually voting on things that come before, like tonight, that come before us. There, I could see the issue of having, as you said, 2 bites of the apple, but your Parks and Rec and all these other ones are kind of advisory commissions, so you don't really run into that issue. And I think that's why we left this ordinance alone, and that's why it was important to have the may in there, so we have options like this. So I'm going to vote for Mr. Jones. I don't, you know what? If right now, if we were having an issue with vandalism and security, I'd think of another applicant, but that's not what our needs are right now, so thank you.
Yeah, I'll take my shot here, if you'll indulge me here for just a second. I don't have any ill feelings toward the other applicant here, on this list that the mayor suggested. But I think if we're honestly looking at resumes of people, you can't get a more involved individual than Councilmember Jones to sit on that Harbor Commission, for the reasons stated by Councilmember Baylor prior, as well as simply looking at the resume of Councilmember Jones. I think that it's important that we have Mr. Craig and Mr. Jones renewing their seats on the Harbor Commission. I too agree that we need to get serious about changing whatever needs to be changed to have an ex officio member on all of the boards. I think part of the reason May got put in there, to correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, was that at that time I think we had 2 council members on the Planning Commission, and both of them were valuable participating members of that commission, and we were making a way for that to continue. And I don't think that it's bad to get 2 bites of the apple. Sometimes you're hungry and you need to get those 2 bites in. So I don't see that as an issue. I think that's actually a more informed vote than what we get to vote on here. Just hearing part of the story, I think that person who has heard the whole story and been involved with it can not only help the rest of us with our information gathering, but has more of an in-depth knowledge of the situation. So I will support the motion that's before us to appoint Jones and Craig to the Harbor Commission, as well as Sherman and Lang to the Historic Preservation Commission. They've done an excellent job on that commission, and I would support that as well. Councilmember Guard.
I am in no way, shape, or form speaking against Councilmember Jones being on the Harbor Commission. I think he's done great things down there. I think he's got great things left to do down there. But when we've had legal counsel tell us it could create problems in the future, and we're looking at what could be, under the most rosy scenarios, as much as a $75 million rebuild for our harbor. If you have legal issues with the $75 million rebuild, that's quite a little bit of exposure you're getting there, for all of us just deciding that it really won't be an issue. So that's the only reason I'm asking these questions. It has nothing to do with Kenny's value to the community, Kenny's honestness, any of that. I got no issues with any of that. I just remember what legal counsel had talked to us about when we talked to him about this stuff. And I'm happy to support whatever else the rest of the council wants to support. I'm just throwing this up for discussion.
Any more comments on this, Councilmember Schaefer?
I also echo Councilman Guard's sentiments of, like, I have no ill will against you on the Harbor Commission. You do a great job. You're energized. But Councilman Allison noted your resume and how you're really involved in CDFU and the Harbor and City Council. You're involved in the Harbor. And I think encouraging other people who also want to get involved, I don't know, I don't think we should quash that so quickly, especially because as a council member, as a CDFU member on the PISWAC, you're going to be involved in the harbor, in the design, everything. You have the other opportunities to be involved. So I'm in support of Andy Craig and Sylvia Lang and Kathy Sherman to those boards, but I would also be more in support of Mark Clord as well.
Other comments? Hearing none, okay, the motion before us is for, to appoint Craig and Jones to the Harbor Commission and Lang and Sherman to the Historic Preservation Commission. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, item 20, council action to make a portion of Copper River Northwestern Company Terminal Ground B available on city land disposal maps. This is just making it
Councilman,
available.
Move to approve.
well,
Been moved
was that the motion? What was the motion?
Move to approve.
to make it available.
To make it available, okay.
Yeah, there's two separate issues
Okay.
with the same piece of property. One is to make it available, and then the other one is to, what we're gonna do with it.
Okay.
So this is just making it available. Is that, any discussion on that? Seeing none, hearing no discussion, all those in favor of making this lot available, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So the next item is council action on disposal and method of disposal for that company terminal ground B.
Mr. Chairman, I move to dispose of a portion of Copper River and Northwestern Company Terminal Ground B as outlined in Cordova Municipal Code 5.22.060B by number 1, negotiating agreement with Sheridan Joyce to lease or purchase the property.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, I just want to reflect on public comment and how there was multiple members of the community that came in tonight to express their support of this. And, you know, I am very pro business and pro small business in Cordova, very pro Cordova person. And I think this is great to see a young Cordovan who left, went off to school, came back, and is starting as his own business and filling a demand that was not met anywhere else in town. I personally have had Sheridan work on some of my ATVs and airboat and some of my toys, and he's done a great job. And I would recommend his business to anybody that needs work on their power sports equipment. And yeah, I think this is going to be a great asset for the community, and I think that the council should support this. Thank you.
The second, who made the second? No
I
comment?
echo the first comments.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, I know Sheridan pretty good. I've watched him work in the field, actually, with my son drowning his four-wheeler on several occasions. And Sheridan was able to get things going there. I think one of them's on video. So he is a heck of a mechanic. I think this would be a good deal.
Councilmember Baylor.
Yeah, I'm going to support this, but I do have some questions and concerns, and it's probably more to protect him more than anything. And I'm wondering if the council would oblige me if I could call the city planner to the table.
Sure.
Thanks, Leif.
Yep.
And I spoke to you earlier, and I think you know some of my concerns, and we'll get to that. I just, you know, I'm concerned about the cost of things and whether or not this young man, and I fully support this, whether he realizes what he's getting into is financial wise. And we had an applicant here a few years ago that's now constructing a metal building down there in Northville. When he was in here, he said, well, I'm going to build this for $300,000. And I said, no, you're not. you know? He called me 2 months later, he said, yeah, you're right, it's up to $1 million bucks. So people need to come into these things with the realization of what it's gonna cost. You know, you're gonna have to put a culvert in, you gotta hook up to the water system. You've got to get permits, you've gotta have engineered drawings, you have to have an engineered foundation. All of this stuff has to pass the, help me out there, fire, life, and safety. These have to be engineered, you know, these are cost. And I want to make sure that he know, before staff puts a lot of time in, that he understands this. Leif has a pretty good handle, Mr. Brown's project, right? Like, would you expand on a little bit of that process of how he came in with the finances and his prices?
Yeah, so we did direct negotiation on that one as well, and I can't remember all of the requirements we had going in, but one of those was having a financial plan where financial documents were provided showing that he had the means, and we did that as part of the direct negotiation before we brought the final lease with option to purchase to council for approval.
Yeah, and did he provide estimates on, you know, and I guess that's what I meant, there's a lot of material to move, what's it gonna cost to hook up water, sewer, all of these things that he's gonna have to do anyway. We're not gonna require anything out of the ordinary. And I guess where I'm headed with this is I would support this, but I would ask that council concur that all of these things should be met before we go down the road of getting a lawyer, getting surveys, and all these other costs, to make sure that he knows exactly what he's getting into. Then once, with conjunction with staff, they can let him know what they have to have, and then we move forward. Because I fear that when he realizes he's gonna have $500,000 into a little bit of a garage, whether or not he can go forward with that or not. And if he can, then that's great. But that's my only concern, is that he goes in this with eyes wide open. So, and then I guess I'd ask you another, so with this being a direct negotiation, is that the normal procedure, or how does that normally work? I think you understand, I don't want you guys to put a lot of staff time and lawyer time and then have this thing fizzle out, or we just sit there with a sold piece of property and not being developed.
Yeah, so the next, if it goes to direct negotiation, then staff handles negotiation. The city manager takes the lead on that with assistance from staff, and then it comes to city council, has to approve the final disposal documents. So, you know, typically we've been doing the lease with option to purchase model for disposing of real property. So, you know, we would do the negotiations, and then we would come back with an ordinance or resolution approving the final lease with option to purchase. So yeah, I mean, any other requirements you would like to see for the direct negotiation, you can specify those now. I think from your comments, have an idea of what you're looking for staff to do rather than just draft the contract and not review things with the applicant, but.
Well, I just feel that it would be helpful both for the city and for the applicant, that once we, I mean, if we pass this tonight, then he's locked into this, so he's not, like I said, he's gonna have to do these things anyway. I would prefer that we would suggest or say that they be done first before we spend a whole lot of staff time and legal time, only to find out this won't go through. You know, Mr. Jones has a warehouse up there. That was $250,000 to put that building.
More than that.
Yeah, well, and that didn't have to be engineered drawings and fire, life, and safety. So I just want to make sure that we understand going through it, so.
Yeah, and just to clarify, this is just the, I don't know what step, this is just a step in the process. This doesn't actually give him a lease or lock him into anything.
Well, it
What we're
does if
doing-
we
what we're
vote
doing
to
tonight.
direct negotiation.
Yeah, but it's still, the lease has to come back to council for final approval.
Right, well, that's.
We're not approving a lease, so he's not locked into anything except negotiating a contract with staff.
Right, and I'm just trying to prevent all of that staff work. We talk about saving money, just making sure that he understands what he's getting into first, and then moving forward. So the information needs to be provided anyway, so let's do it up front, I guess is what I'm saying. But you guys concur with that, otherwise it's gonna go their normal route. But we talk about trying to save money and workload. I think that's the smart way to do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The planner can tell us how much extra work that is, but I don't see that as,
Well, you're gonna
As
have a
much-
lawyer draw up a resolution.
No, but that's not until,
if I was a city manager, I wouldn't have the attorney look up anything. I'd grab the last one we did and make some changes to it. I wouldn't be wasting my money on an attorney at this point in time.
Yep.
But that's, we're authorizing our city manager to negotiate with her staff and the purchaser, and I don't see any problem moving forward with this step. I think the manager has heard the concerns. The planner knows the concerns. I think that they can work with that. I don't think there's a whole bunch, the purchaser, the proposer is sitting here in the audience and he's hearing all the numbers you're throwing out, and he may have good financing lined up, but certainly all of that should be part of the package and the plan. If we're leasing with the option to purchase, certainly the option to purchase has to have some criteria to it. So
Yeah, I would just point out that, we've done several direct negotiations and we've also done the request for proposals. When you do the request for proposals, you do get a little bit more of the package, a plan that's been developed a little bit more than you get with just the letter of interest. So, in the past, that's what you all have seen as you make some of these decisions.
Yeah, so my heartache is instead of a building, we got Connexes down here. Instead of a building, we've got a storage lot on the Northville. I just like to try to hold these people a little more accountable to understand what they're getting into.
the other,
Yeah, this is Melina.
yeah, go ahead, Melina.
I have a hard time with any of these city properties that we vote to go straight to negotiating right after making a plot of land from unavailable to available. I don't think that maybe this answer can be, or this question can be answered right now necessarily, and I'll bring it up again on the agenda, but it kind of just goes to my thought on this one in general, that I would like to see more of a process on this, because it is city-owned land that the public in turn has a say into, and I just would like a little more thought into how we dispose of land, and maybe doing it at a certain time so that these things don't get sprung on the public, essentially. I mean, we do due process on getting our agenda out there to the public and put it out there with the appropriate amount of time. But unless you're a really diligent community member that looks over every single agenda, these things, it can go really unnoticed, especially if you look at our land disposal map and something that says unavailable. A lot of people might not know that you can request it to become available, and that's how you get land. So I'm torn with this one, not just, I think it would be a good business, and I want to promote business. I just have a hard time with how we get rid of property, city property, especially when it goes from unavailable to available in the same meeting. So I haven't decided how I vote, but I'm leaning towards no right now.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments, Melina. I have some of the same thoughts, but the last time we moved some property from unavailable to available, I think I mentioned, or I commented that it's all available. It's, here's notice to the public right now from this council member that anything that the city has is for sale for the right proposal. There's absolutely no unavailable property in the city in my mind. So if you've got a good proposal for something and it makes sense, you know, any property that's not being used right now hasn't been being used since, when did we incorporate the city, 1906 or something like that, so, I think it's a good opportunity. I know that we'll take some heat for not throwing it out for RFPs, but I think that's more work for staff. I think staff can require whatever they want to require in the negotiating process. Staff has heard comments and knows what concerns we are gonna need to be addressed. Some of us at least will need to have addressed when it comes time to approve any lease purchase. So I'm comfortable with it at that. Any other comments, Councilmember Baylor?
Yeah, and I take your comments to heart. I would feel uncomfortable if this was a flat lot that was basically ready to be developed. I would not want to go into direct negotiations. I think that opens up, but this is a lot that's going to take a lot of work. And we do have a pretty good process in place, I think. And as a developer, you look at it, well, like this young man put the time and effort to identify this lot, you know, and then you put it out there for everybody else to kind of take that idea. I mean, there's that part of it too, but there's going to be an awful lot of work on this lot, so I feel comfortable with the direct negotiations. But if it was kind of a flat lot ready to go on it, I would say no, we would need to put that out to the public.
Okay, if I could just step in one more time then?
Yeah, go ahead, you're up.
All right, yeah, actually, I didn't really realize that that wasn't a flat lot in my mind. So maybe the planner, if he's still sitting there, maybe he could describe this lot a little bit? Because if I was there, I'd probably drive by it, but I'm not there right now.
Yeah, so it's located adjacent to the property that Eagle Contracting owns, and I believe there's a little bit of small flat space in the corner of the lot, but due to the DOT highway having 100 feet from center line, it's pretty far back from the road, and so most of it is, you know, as Councilman Baylor said, would need a lot of groundwork to develop it further, plus a driveway.
And it's woods.
And where's the access road to this lot? How would they access it?
It isn't there
Would they
yet.
put in their own access road?
Yeah, they'd have to get a driveway permit through DOT. You know, they could possibly access it through Eagle Contracting's lot, but I think they're going to get a driveway permit and have to put in a driveway to the lot.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any questions. You guys convinced me. I'll vote yes. And I'll bring my other concerns up at pending agenda about land disposal.
Hey, Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, I'm also supportive of negotiating directly with the applicant. I think it's a really good spot for that kind of business. It would get it out of the neighborhood, give them more space, so I'm supporting this.
Okay, anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Good luck with your
Thanks, Leif.
negotiations. Okay, council action on disposal and method of disposal for old Sea Grant building.
I move to dispose of building locally known as the old Sea Grant building located on a portion of Lot 3, Block 7A, Tidewater Development Park, as outlined in the Cordova Municipal Code 5.22.060E by, sorry, negotiating an agreement with the Prince William Sound Science Center to lease or purchase the property.
Second.
Second.
I'll yield to those that have more information on this building.
Councilmember Jones?
Yeah, so this building, they took it over 1999, something like that, 1999. And they've done quite a bit of work to it. It's located on the Old Harbor Approach. kind of kitty corner to where the Forest Service building is, I believe is the right, yeah. So it's basically a warehouse facility for some of their stuff. And they asked for a 3-year extension to the Harbor Commission, and, you know, we really didn't have any problem with it. They've been good stewards of the building and good stewards of community resources in general. So I'm going to be supporting this. I think it's a great thing to help them just, you know, get the next 3 years so they can focus on getting their new building built. There was some discussion of a previous council when they renewed the lease the last time saying this is the last one and then we're tearing this building down. But I don't feel like that's the case anymore. I don't think anybody really cares to tear it down right away or find a new tenant. So just extend it for them, let them get their new building built, let them get moved, situated. And they currently have their stuff scattered with like 7 different locations across town, even out at the airport. So can't wait to see them build their new campus and consolidate. And yeah, so anyways.
Any other
Just,
comments?
yeah, the extension for a 3-year lease will give the Science Center some time to, with the new building, to figure out what kind of storage they need in town, while also it will give the harbor and the city time to figure out what future plans we may have in store for that building. So give time for both parties to get their ducks in a row.
Sounds good. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, pending agenda, calendar, et cetera.
Would like to talk about the impact tax at some point. That's Helen brought up.
Second.
For this budget year or as part of discussions?
Just on
next year?
pending agenda.
Okay.
Isn't that what you said? Pending agenda, is that where we're at?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but sometimes we say on pending agenda, we're talking about things we want on the next agenda or just for some future agenda. I'd say that should be just part of our overall look at that Helen's gonna do with everything next
I'd-
year. So just put it on the pending.
Yeah.
Pending
It sounded
agenda.
like a summertime thing anyways, maybe.
Oh.
I don't know.
Well, when you're fishing. Okay, Melina, you had something?
Yeah, I would like to have a discussion just on future agenda items. It can be even a new next year, middle of winter, doesn't really matter, but about land disposals. I know we've talked about it before, but I'd kind of like to talk a little bit more about when we dispose of land.
Could I just offer some
Sure, go ahead, Tom.
information on that? I mean,
Yeah.
I think a good spot or good starting place for that would go to your planning and zoning commission, because we've beat this thing to death. And they really would have, they'd be the ones, Leif or even the commission, go talk to them and make sure you got a good understanding of the way it works. And then if there's some things we need to tweak, then I'm not opposed to putting it on the agenda. I'm just saying that might be the first place to start.
Well, and don't they?
Maybe we could
sorry.
put it on future agendas for a discussion item, and then if we talk about it, we can refer it to that committee,
Sure,
a certain item, so that we
sounds good. Right
maybe
after
talk
the,
about it a little bit about what we're looking for council coming to us, and then refer it to that committee to get their input on what their process could be to help aid how our process is in the end.
sounds good. Maybe second meeting of January.
So a good time to have that discussion maybe when they come back. Don't they do the disposal maps at the beginning of the year? Yeah, so maybe
Yeah.
having the discussion when the disposal maps come up for approval would be the appropriate time.
Okay, sounds good. Council,
I've got some, and
I,
go ahead, Councilmember Gard.
my only question is, are we really talking about changing a calendar that we can only do it at a certain time of year? Or is what our worry about this is adequate notification time for the public instead of saying we put it up for disposal tonight and then the same night directing staff to go into direct negotiations? I mean, we may want to change something in code to give ourselves some time period for adequate notice there. Other than that, I don't know that our land disposal stuff is really broken.
I think Councilmember Baylor is right on that. All of those type of things, the planning commission should consider and give us an opinion on, and we can set some policy or procedure, and whether those are hard coded into the code or just things that we do. You know, we can have that discussion at some point in time, but I think it needs to start with the planning commission. And when they look at their disposal maps, that's the appropriate time to do that. The planners hearing this discussion, so.
Well, yeah, but we're saying we're doing everything on when we do the disposal map once a year. And then we're also in the same meeting, I'm telling everybody that anything we've got's for sale, just come and tell us you want us to sell it to you.
That's my opinion.
I understand, I'm not arguing with any of that. The only thing I'm saying is we maybe want to have some process involved. It's not so much, you know, because the planning commission doesn't tell us how to shove this whole thing through the needle hole to get it done. They tell us that, yes, we suggest we give this, these are the reasons we suggest it. These are, you know, the.
Sounds like we better put it on a
sales
future
process.
agenda. So I've got a couple, 2-3 items, if nobody else, but.
Go ahead.
And if council disagrees with me, then that's fine. But one of the things I thought about is I know the water situation, the new water source. I know staff is looking at this, and they've got some grant money. I'd like to see, and if Helen's listening, maybe just an update, you know, but I think council needs to think about a long-term objective of where are we going to get water if we have another shortage, and with our snowpack being the way it is, we could be scrambling again next year. And then another long-term goal, but not so long, maybe less than 3 years, is what are we going to do when that burn pile goes away? There's a lot of stuff that goes through that. So that's another one of those long-term goals that we need to start thinking about. UBS, I'd like to see us go out for an RFP, but they also offered us some other
Institutional consulting.
yeah, and we never really did take up that discussion. For myself, I'd like to get update, and I'd like to go out for an RFP. Just for everybody's information, and that's another thing I'd like to look at as far as our legal team. I believe Homer has moved on from Birch, Horton, and Bittner. I don't know who they hired. I tried to find out today, but maybe the city planner in Homer was at the Anchorage. I couldn't get a phone there, but it would be interesting to see who Homer moved to. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about that, but our former mayor Joyce did tell me that they moved on from Birch, Horton, or Bittner.
I would definitely
I can find
second
out.
that.
I'm in meetings with the city manager of Homer, so
There
that'd
you
be an
go.
easy thing to find out.
There you go. And,
Homer, but I don't know that I really want to become a Homer legalistically.
okay, and that's,
Over the years.
I guess that's all I had. And those are, the UBS, I think, is something we should be looking at when we get done with our budget. And the other things are kind of a long-term, you know, thing, is water source, burn pile, and legal.
Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, so I know you guys all got, I think you got the email from Susan about the United States Maritime Administration, MARAD, harbor infrastructure stuff that's coming down the pike, and I'd like to see that added to our pending agenda for the beginning of next year, is getting on top of that, figuring out what we have to do to apply for that grant. I think we need to be applying for the build grant and that one simultaneously. It's probably going to take some sort of an expenditure, probably an RFP, to give a professional package put together, try to go after either just floating rebuild or a whole harbor basin rebuild. We've talked about, kind of depends on the levels of which their grants are capped, what our budget would be. Just would like to see that added to our future agendas, discussion on with staff after they have time to get through the budget, and then talk about amongst themselves what this is going to take, do a little fact finding, then bring it to us and tell us what we need to do to help support them go after this grant, because it could be a really good opportunity for us.
Sounds good. Councilmember Schaefer?
Do we know if have we heard back from First Alaskans yet regarding training? Do you know? No.
I don't believe so.
Okay. Is there any way we could follow up our request?
Yes.
Yeah, this is also Melina. Last time I asked Clay, he hadn't gotten contact with them, so if council wants me to, I can try to get in contact with them too, because
Don't you know one of their board members?
anyway, so I could formally ask them about it if council wants.
I mean,
Yeah, Melina,
with
don't you know one of their board members?
I do know one of their board members.
Yeah, if we could follow up with them, I think we're all interested in working with them, so. Councilmember Schaefer, did you have something else?
that was it.
Anybody else? So we're putting all of that,
Melina.
go ahead, Melina.
Kind of on the same line that Tom was talking about the burn pile, and I just would like to see that one on there, just talking about refuse in general. I know when we had the bear problem, we kind of talked about neighborhood dumpsters, and still on the idea that that might be able to save the city some money to look into that. So I think refuse in general, how we're doing it, and what kind of problems we can see down the line, especially if the burn pile is going to have to close in the future. So just to put that maybe along the same lines with it.
Sounds good. We got a loaded spring. Yeah. You get all of that, Dina?
I think so.
Anything else?
One more thing, and it's
Yeah.
kind of a big one.
Fire out.
So NVE has expressed some interest in pursuing I can't remember the exact word, but basically an inland ferry authority.
Mhm.
They do not have the authority to form such a thing, but we do under current law. And so maybe we need to talk with them about how we can support their endeavor. I don't necessarily want it to be a city endeavor,
No.
but legally right now they couldn't start one, but we could if they wanted to. I don't know. I think it would be a good idea to have a meeting with their leadership, or it could just be Helen sitting down with Bert. I'm not sure exactly. Just wanted to get it
So
on our.
I'm meeting, we're trying to meet every 2 weeks on Fridays, so I've already set up a kind of regular meeting time with them because I think there are some excellent partnership opportunities, and that project was actually mentioned, so.
Yeah, and so right now, I believe, whether or not whoever took this project on would want to go for this, but I do believe the two Geneva and Fairweather fast class ferry vessels are up for purchase right now to government entities within the state of Alaska. So right now, a private individual couldn't buy them, but a government entity could put in a letter of interest and potentially get one or both of those vessels, which our docks are designed for. So anyways, just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I think anytime we can work together, we're stronger together than we are apart, so it's good. Any other things for the pending agenda? Okay, we'll move on to audience participation then. Comments from the audience? Anybody going once? They're all running up here.
Wake up.
Melina, there's about 6 or 8 people left in the audience. There was probably another 6 or 8 that left earlier. Okay, we'll go with council comments then. Melina, we'll start with you on the line.
All right, just up in Anchorage, so I really appreciate this opportunity to go to the training. The elected officials training that was on Monday and Tuesday was really good, learned a lot. I think it helped being on council for a while, learning on the job, but coming here and really soaking it in has been a really great experience, and talking to other council members, mainly from other coastal communities, has been a really good experience. And I attended the PERS meeting along with Helen. We both went to it and got some information there. And the next main one that I'm going to do is tomorrow morning for the ferry work reform kind of discussion, and I'll be heading off on the plane. So really appreciate this experience. I wish everybody would do it every year and all go, but I know it's a lot of time to take out of your schedule, but I'd really encourage any other council members next year to attend if possible.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones.
I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, audience members, and I want to thank you guys for the support on the Harbor Commission nomination. I really appreciate that, and hopefully I can serve you well and serve the community well in that capacity. And I'm really glad that Jeff and I got to argue a little bit tonight, because it's just kind of fun. So
Home week, ain't it?
thanks for being here tonight, Jeff, and yeah.
Hey, Councilmember Gleason.
Thanks for everybody showing up, and just for the public to know that we're doing our best right now, and that we can tighten our belt with the city, but that does not help our immediate problem right now. And until our governor either gets the boot or his years are up, we're stuck with some expensive things. So if people want to comment on those taxes, tell them to come in at the next meeting when we do our second reading, or whenever we do our second reading, and chew on us, you know. But read what Helen has written down, because it's a pretty good description of the pickle we're in. So that's it.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, thanks to everyone for sticking it out tonight. And also I'd like to echo Councilman Gleason's comments that, yeah, we're trying our best to explore a lot of different options. I'm sure there are efficiencies that we can find in the budget, but we can't necessarily just cut our way out of it, and we need to be looking at new revenues. So we love your input. Please email us, come to the meetings, and let us know what you think. Yeah, we just need to invest in our community.
Councilmember Gard.
Thank you for arguing with me tonight, Kenny. I've enjoyed it immensely.
It's always fun.
It always is. And thank everybody for showing up that showed up. And again, I'll reiterate, the reason we put 2 sales tax ordinances on the agenda was we kind of wanted to get everybody's attention and have them start putting some input into what we're doing ahead of time, so we don't end up with another ballot initiative and a budget all out of kilter because of it. So please, everyone that's got any comments on it, let us know, and we can make an informed decision from there. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Baylor.
Ellen, thank you very much for calling and attending this meeting there. You're up in Anchorage and busy. I appreciate that. I guess one other thing I had is, and don't take this as a directive, I'm not asking you to do this, but if you had time, I would really appreciate if you could have a discussion with some of these other city managers on who handles their funds. Again, we have UBS. I'm just curious of what other municipalities are doing, and only if you have time to get into something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, appreciate it. And I keep hammering on this, but I think we need to pay a little more closer attention to what's going on with that, especially in these upcoming times. You know, a lot of people in the know, and I agree with, as this market keeps climbing, it gets up to 32, 33, I'm going to be pulling back into a cash position because I think that's just over-exuberance and it's bubble time. And if one of the Democratic nominees like Elizabeth or Bernie or happen to be president, a lot of them are saying you're looking at a 25% drop immediately. So I'd like to know from the professionals what they think and what positions they're taking too. And I think we should go off of RFP too to look at other options. So thanks everybody for being here, and that we take no joy in raising taxes, but I think we do need to let our city manager get a hold of things. Thank you.
Okay, I too thank everybody for coming out and making comments tonight. Would echo Councilmember Guard's comments. Those of you out in Radio Land, listening to this or watching on YouTube or however you're getting your information about council, we need your opinion on the 7% or the 5/8 split. If you've got other ideas for making up the gap that the state has left us with. So it's important that we get input from the community. We don't, any of us like to sit up here making decisions without knowing or getting an idea what the public thinks about what we're voting on. I'd just like to take a minute or two here to throw out some kudos to our school board and our school administration. I attended, had the opportunity to be a chaperone at the Leadership Institute that they have during their school board annual, I suppose it's the annual meeting. I don't know, Dave came to some of the events there. It was a Thursday through Sunday, and I've been to a lot of different conferences for various organizations, and let me tell you, this conference was packed from 7:30 in the morning to 10:30 at night for the kids anyway. For the Leadership Institute, 2 to 7 kids from each school district attended this. I think there was about 70 or 80 kids in total, with 23 or 24 chaperones, something like that. Well, anyway, the chaperones were busy from 7:30 to 10:30 every day as well. We had our own meetings and we had to attend some of the ones with them. But anyway, we had a lot of time to coordinate or to associate with other school board members, administration members, other students, roundtables, as well as meal times that we had the opportunity to sit there and talk with people. And our school board and school administration does a lot of things that, quite frankly, most of the other schools wished they could do or were trying to do. I mentioned a little bit with the college credits, the dual credits. I mean, there were schools struggling to get their kids with 5 or 6 credits by the time they graduated, and we're sitting here with that's probably the minimum for most of our kids. They're getting 40 or 50 credits in their time, and that saves a lot of money in the end. Our school board has lunch with the students fairly regularly, once a month at least, maybe a couple of times. I see them advertised all the time. They have a lunch with the 8th graders, I think, coming up here next week or something. A lot of schools were trying to do that and didn't do it. Strategic plan, and any number of things, I won't go on and on about it, but about everything that everybody was trying to do, our school was already doing. And it's a good kudos to them. I think they're doing a good job, and I appreciated that. And our students are well prepared for the future compared to a lot of the other kids. the stories that the chaperones told about their kids and where they were at in the status of things, and you know, our students I had no problems at all with our students as far as they knew what they were doing. They knew how to handle it. They were well accustomed to traveling, and so anyway, just throw some kudos out there to the school district overall, the kids, the school board, and the administration all can be very proud of what they do. So that said, I don't think we need an executive session, do we? Anybody?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
We will be adjourned. Thanks, Melina. Thanks, Helen.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.